Hey guys, welcome back to the video. In this video, you guys, my spoiler-free review for Devotion. Devotion is a true story about the first black aviator in the U.S. Navy, Jesse Brown, played by Jonathan Majors, and his fellow fighter pilot Tom Hudner, played by Glen Powell during the Korean War. I did a double feature of Bones and All and Devotion, but I love Devotion so much, I decided I wanted to make a dedicated video to it. But I'm also doing a double feature of Knives Out, Glass Onion, and The Fabelmans. But I'm also going to be doing a recap review of Bones and All and The Fabelmans, as I do want to make Glass Onion its own video because I'm a huge fan of the first one. I feel like I'm gonna have a lot to say. So hit that subscribe button, notification on so you don't miss that recap review as well as my Glass Onion Knives Out review. But all that aside, let's get into it talking about Devotion. Now, 6 months ago, we did get Top Gun Maverick, and I think that's the biggest comparison to make to this movie. And that's what a lot of people have been talking about since the trailers started coming out for this movie. And I'd only seen one of the trailers for Devotion, and I was really interested, primarily because I'm absolutely in love with Jonathan Majors as an actor. He is phenomenal. He's one of, if not my favorite working actor right now. I think he's going to be the next big star in Hollywood, and he already is going to be because he's in Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania coming out in February. He's going to be the main villain of the Creed 3 movie. There is so much going on for this guy, and Devotion does not shy away from that at all. I'm going to talk more specifically about the performances and acting later in this video because I do specifically want to start off by talking about the Top Gun Maverick comparisons. Like I said before, Top Gun Maverick came out 6 months ago at this point, and so there's a lot of comparisons because it does star Glen Powell, Hangman from Top Gun Maverick. And there are also a lot of different similarities between this movie and Top Gun Maverick. But I think what this movie does way better than Top Gun Maverick is visualizing the action itself. Now, the action is completely different here because it's more based on shooting and bombs rather than actual fighter jets maneuvering one another. And so I think that's really where this one flourishes above Top Gun Maverick. But I will say, in terms of how it's captured in camera, I do still think Top Gun Maverick is superior. But in terms of just the raw action, the amount of explosions, the way that the bullets are visualized, I don't want to give too much away here, but the way that they really just immerse us into this war is 100% perfect. I didn't watch this in Dolby, didn't watch it in IMAX. I watched it in a regular small theater, and I was so just engulfed by the direction of this action. And I'm excited to rewatch this movie just for the action purposes, but the action isn't where it ends because the emotional side of this movie is still a gut punch, and I think that's also where it elevates the stuff above Top Gun Maverick. Top Gun Maverick has emotional moments, and I think there are great emotional performances throughout the movie, but I think what is so strong about this movie in comparison to Top Gun Maverick is that, yes, Tom Cruise puts on a great performance, Miles Teller puts on a great performance, and so does Glen Powell in Top Gun Maverick. But in this movie, Jonathan Majors gives what I would consider to be one of, if not the best lead actor performance of this entire year, and Glen Powell also delivers a phenomenal supporting actor role here. Glen Powell didn't really stick out to me in the first, I would say, act of this movie, but as the movie keeps on going, you get really invested in his character. And I have a lot to say about the politics side of this movie because I thought that they used it really well, and implementing Glen Powell's character in a story about the first black naval aviator is, I think, could end in the wrong way, especially when you have that story of a semi-white savior. And I think they handled that really well here, which I'll talk about in just a second. But before I dive too deep into characters and acting, once again, I want to just talk about just this action that the movie has. It delivers some of the best action of the year, in my opinion. Again, I still think when we're talking generally, Top Gun Maverick is above it, just because you can tell they did every single thing practically. And in this movie, it feels like everything is still just as raw. But I also think since it's more of a period piece, it's a lot more difficult to immerse yourself into the seats of these fighter pilots. Whereas if you watch Top Gun Maverick, you feel like, okay, you know this stuff is possible and you've seen it with your own eyes in the skies and stuff like that. And so it feels like you can have more of a connection to the action in Top Gun Maverick in comparison to the action in Devotion. But I will also say I think the cinematography works as a period piece. I think it's shot generally much better than Top Gun Maverick in not just the action sequences, but just the regular sequences. And Devotion doesn't have like the 4 or 5 big action set pieces like Top Gun Maverick does. It has more or less like 2 or 3 bigger ones, but I still think the bigger action scenes that it has, it complements the cinematography in, are more grounded and less huge action sequences. I feel like the cinematography is a lot more personal with these characters, and I think overall it works very well. I think what really brings together the cinematography and the action in this movie is the score, and I quickly want to go back to Top Gun Maverick because what I thought Maverick did so unique was the fact that there was wasn't a lot of like intense score and a lot of upbeat score going on during the action sequences, but there's a big action sequence in the middle of this movie, and it's in regards to a bridge thing, and I'm not going to get too deep into the spoilers and stuff like that, but I think that the score, when it started slowly rising throughout that scene, you really felt that tension, and Maverick does that towards its final act, but for most of it during the training sequences and all of those super intense scenes, it does just go raw, no audio, you just hear straight up the fighter jets, and it works in that scenario. But here, I think Devotion works best when you have that little trickling score in the background, just always on the edge of your mind, just tailing everything that's happening, and then it finally just blows up and the score just goes insane, and there's these crazy intense moments that are always just absolutely elevated by the score in and of itself. Like I mentioned earlier in this video, Jonathan Majors is an absolute force in this movie, and Glen Powell is amazing as well, and I'll talk about him in just a second here, but I think Jonathan Majors, the way he just conveys his character is absolutely perfect, and I no doubt going into this movie that he was going to be phenomenal in it, and this is probably his career best thus far. I've seen a lot of his other movies, and I think this is it, and I think he's definitely going to surpass it sometime in the future. I mean, hell, he's going to be in Creed 3 and Ant-Man and the Lost Quantumania. He's going to be the next big bad in the MCU. He has so much stuff going on, and again, I have no doubt that he's going to top this, but I think as of now, this is my favorite performance from him. He has this one take scene in the near the beginning of the movie where he just goes from edge to edge, the full 360 degrees of acting emotion, and it's in like the first 20 minutes of this movie, and that's how you know he's delivering a lifetime of a performance here. I 100% think he deserves to be nominated for Best Actor at the Oscars this year. I don't know if it's gonna happen, but I do want him to be nominated because he puts on an acting clinic here. And then obviously next to him you have Glen Powell, who was also in Top Gun Maverick. I think that he was really good in Top Gun Maverick, but his performance here is 10 times better, and I think it's because he gets to express those happy and emotionally high moments as he does in Top Gun Maverick, but he also gets those emotionally low moments. He plays a more directly supporting character, seeing all the emotion that Jonathan Majors' character is going through. He gets to support all of that with his acting skills, and I do believe that Glen Powell will also flourish in the future of Hollywood. Whatever movie he ends up doing next, I think he's going to be absolutely phenomenal, and in this movie he is great. And I did mention this earlier in the video, but I do want to talk about the political themes here because I do think they do a really good job of balancing it all. I think that it's very, very heavy throughout this entire movie, and for good reason. I mean, it makes 100% sense why it's a big factor in this movie, but I think one major flaw I have with the movie comes in with the political themes, and not necessarily the themes themselves, but how the story is paced due to the themes. Near the end of the movie, obviously you have Glen Powell as your supporting character, and that kind of leads to a white savior role situation going on. And if you haven't already read the book, which this movie is based off of a true story, and there's also a book about it, don't read the book if you're planning to watch this movie because obviously it's going to give away spoilers. And so obviously they're not choosing to go the white savior route, and I don't know how the book handles it. I don't know how it actually happened in real life. I don't know all these comparisons. I'm just talking about what the movie is giving us here. But I think that the way they try to navigate around it, I think at that point it kind of became like, okay, we're pulling this movie to its limits. We're kind of getting to the end here, and we can see the end in sight, but we just don't necessarily want it to be a white savior ending, and I completely understand that, and I think they did the best they could with this situation going on in the movie. But I think that definitely dragged out the pacing, dragged out the story a little further than it needed to go, and that's just overall my issue with the movie, is just the pacing. I think it's a fine runtime. It's like 2 hours and 20 minutes, I think. It's not too long, it's not too short. I just feel like within the story itself, the pacing was a little bit weird due to the political themes. But yeah, guys, those are pretty much all of my thoughts on Devotion. I really, really like this movie. It's like a period piece version of Top Gun Maverick with phenomenal performances, and overall, it's just a fun and action-packed, but still emotional time. Overall, I'm going to give Devotion a solid 8.5 out of 10. If you've seen or want to check out Devotion, let me know what you think of it in the comments down below. Again, I'll be dropping a few more movie reviews this week, so if you guys are interested in them, make sure to subscribe and notifications on so you don't miss any time I upload a video or go live. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Peace.